It's important that we, as journalists, help you, the viewer, to understand how to navigate misinformation and harmful myths that surface in the fog of war. Whether it's videos that pop up on social media or watching a newscast, false claims spread and can stoke economic anxiety, terrorism fears, racism, even religious bias. And that's where the technology and social change team at Harvard's Shorenstein Center and groups like the investigative team at ProPublica come into play. Right now, they are scouring the internet and compiling all kinds of essential information to help you dissect, detect, and document and debunk misinformation when it comes to the unfolding conflict in Ukraine. Joining us now, Dr. Joan Donovan, research director there at the Shorenstein Center, and Craig Silverman, a national reporter for ProPublica and former media editor of BuzzFeed News, where he pioneered coverage of digital disinformation. We are so glad to have you both with us today. Good to see you both.
Thank you so much.
Joan, let's go ahead and let's start with you, and let's start with TikTok. Just something as simple as the hashtag Ukraine. It already has more than 30 billion views. People scrolling from here, Ukraine, even Russia. So I just want to take a look at this one image that your team highlighted from early on in the war, allegedly showing troops in combat. But you knew it was fake as we look at these various images. How did you know?
So
right.
When we were looking for any kind of fakes or forgeries, what we're really looking for is recontextualized media. And so a lot of times it's just stuff that's been found on the internet that's been repackaged as something else. And so one of the techniques that we use is kind of digital forensics that anybody can do, which includes reverse image search to see if that image has been available before, or using some video analysis software. But ultimately, a lot of this comes down to the weather. Weirdly enough, but a lot of the early recontextualized footage that wasn't of Ukraine but looked like it could be from a war was either springtime or it was snowing, and the weather just didn't match up with what was actually happening in Kiev.
We have one of those images.
Areas.
You know what? Hold that thought. Let's see if we can bring up that image.
Okay.
It's actually a still shot of troops, and it's a close-up of troops. And you can see grass in the picture. So while we're looking to find that image, which we did cut, let's see if we can do that. Explain that one picture, because how did you know that those weren't actually Ukrainian troops firing upon Russians? Do you think we can find the image, guys?
If they don't
find it, they're looking for it.
What it looks
but
like
it helps.
is
this is what helps
shooting.
People, right?
Exactly. Is you have to be attuned to what's happening in the moment, and so there's a lot of greenery in the picture, and we know that right now it's not springtime in Ukraine, and so that gave it away. And then there was another part of the image where Ukrainian soldiers are had started to wear these bright yellow armbands to denote that they were, Ukrainian soldiers, and so those kinds of missing or contextual factors are really important when you're trying to look at if something is a forgery or a fake or just repurposed.
All right, I apologize. We can't seem to get those things in order, but I'll definitely direct people to your website where they can see those specifics. So, Craig, you investigated and gathered all kinds of videos on social media. We're going to hopefully roll through a number of screenshots that you put together for us. Yes, this is right. What did you discover that was just blatantly false as you came across these images online?
Well, this is kind of a devious technique where what we came across were a bunch of videos that on their face seemed to actually be fact-checking videos, where they were Russian language videos pointing out something that was, incorrect, as Dr. Donovan said, recontextualized media. So an old image of a destroyed military vehicle that had a Ukrainian flag put on it. And the debunking was saying, look, here are Ukrainians creating fakes, showing that they've destroyed a Russian vehicle or putting a logo on one that didn't have it before. And what was crazy about this is we realized that the fakes themselves had never actually circulated. And so at the end of the day, what we were able to confirm was that these were fake fact-checking videos where they created Ukrainian disinformation to try and undermine for Russian speakers any claims about, Russian military setbacks, any claims about strikes on civilian areas. So it was fact checking as disinformation, which is kind of a couple layers of disturbingness.
Yeah, no doubt. And it looks real, and as soon as you see fact check, to the average person, they're probably thinking, oh, okay, this is what I can believe. Joan, your team also put together this great list of 6 things to know when it came to the history and politics of these nations to help viewers understand why this conflict is even happening. Briefly run through the first 3, and I've got it right here in front of me in case we need to go into any specifics. But just the 3 points here, starting with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. It didn't start in 2022, which a lot of people who don't know the history of the 2 nations didn't realize that.
Yeah, and if you think back, it's not that long ago, but in 2014, after the Sochi Olympics, you saw Russia invade Crimea, and eventually Crimea was annexed. And then we saw slowly over time, Russia had encroached upon other areas of Ukraine, which points to the other 2 issues here. One is Russia's tactic of spreading disinformation, using Russian state media as channels of propaganda to support the Kremlin. And in that, Russian state media seeks to undermine the history of Ukraine by suggesting the third point, which is this claim that Russia created Ukraine and that Ukraine is not an independent country in any way. But of course, Ukraine actually predates Russia and Moscow. And is a country full of a very vibrant culture of people that are proud to be Ukrainian and have a unique language and set of culture that they enjoy. And so those 3 points together, the redeployment of the historical narrative of Russia as this all-encompassing territory that basically birthed Ukraine. That's what's at stake here. And of course, the very recent history of battle that Ukrainians feel that Russia has been invading them for years now. And we're only starting to pay attention on the West because it's affecting inflation and all of these other important global geopolitical issues.
Right. Everybody's feeling it in the pocketbook, but also we're seeing it visually like we've never seen it before. And Craig and Joan, we've all talked about this, how this is probably going to go down as the most documented war in history because of social media, right? And everybody has a device and is on some sort of platform. And Craig, you investigated and exposed actual Russian-paid trolls that are out there putting out all this pro-Putin disinformation. Tell us more.
Yeah, we worked with researchers from Clemson, and people will remember that back around the 2016 election, there was a Russian organization called the Internet Research Agency, which has links to the Russian government, where they were professional paid trolls working in shifts, basically pretending to be Americans and all over social media, publishing divisive content. What we found with the researchers were sets of Russian language accounts across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram that have hallmarks of those same Internet Research Agency types of accounts. They were spreading pro-Putin, pro-Russian propaganda. They were taking old videos, sharing them as new, pretending that they were Ukrainians, faking civilian deaths. And so we saw actually they were extremely effective on TikTok, generating millions and millions of views, millions and millions of likes, pushing out Russian state content. And so they appear to be active in this conflict, and TikTok and Twitter removed many of the accounts, but we've seen them sort of come back on these platforms since.
Wow. And Joan, let's hit the last final 3 tips about things that we should know when we read about the war in Ukraine, starting with the issue of NATO, right? That's been a big part of this contention or this tension with Putin. But actually, Ukraine is a partner, not a member of NATO, but is a partner. And not a lot of people understand that.
Yeah, and that's where the debate about where the planes and air defense might come from. U.S. and other countries have been sending missiles, javelins, in order to do anti-aircraft warfare, and Ukrainians then have to use these weapons. But if they were a partner, if they were a member of NATO, then they would be protected by this, clause that says an attack against one is an attack against all. And this really goes to a few key things about why we're in this predicament in the U.S., where in 1994, there was an agreement where Ukraine decided to give up their nuclear weapons so long as there would be a guarantee of security from Russia. And the United States and the United Kingdom were supposed to protect that. So in line with not being a partner in NATO, they also have denuclearized Ukraine, and that has been putting them at a different kind of risk because they obviously cannot threaten this kind of full-scale nuclear assault that many in the West and Biden and others in the White House have been really trying to figure out if this is even, going to scale to that level. And then lastly, it's really important that we understand is that Putin has been in power for a very long time in Russia, and Zelensky, is the president of Ukraine, has only been there since 2019. And if you don't remember, back during the first impeachment of Trump, Zelensky was the person that Trump had that very perfect best phone call with in terms of trying to get. Yes, exactly. The quid pro quo argument. And this was, in fact, about money for Ukrainian defense. And Ukrainian defense goes mainly into trying to ward off Russia incursion. And so this is a really important political issue that we have to pay attention to, but also that the United States has made some promises here in terms of protecting Ukraine going back to 1994 and the denuclearization arguments that we have to be mindful of and respectful of. And I think it ultimately points to this vision of the future of democracy and where modern nations want to go in terms of leadership and the relationship between countries. I'm kind of throwing this out there, and Craig, tell me if you can answer this, and I'm sure, Joan, you could weigh in, but, you bring up that infamous moment of the quid pro quo, that phone call that happened between Trump and Zelensky, and he was trying to get scoop during the election. He was trying to get dirt, right, on for the campaign on his competitor at that time, and allegedly said, I'm going to take away support for all your weapons until you give me dirt on my political opponent. And then, of course, it was all over the news. I even traveled to the region at that time. There has been talk out there about the fact that, is that what contributed to this? Is that why Zelensky is having a harder time staving off the Russians because Trump, took away the aid and the help to Ukraine? I know we're kind of going a little bit into the weeds, but it is a little background. The story has come up. The conversation has taken place. Is this an example of misinformation? Craig?
I think in that scenario, one of the concerns of the kind of, the consequences from it is that obviously it frayed some of the relations at that time between Ukraine and the United States. And while Biden has sort of stepped in and said that he is, stalwartly behind Ukraine, it did delay some of their ability to, get some funding and get some weapons. And perhaps that fed into Putin's plans about eventually trying to invade and take over and take more territory from Ukraine. So it is amazing to see how something that happened that had sort of faded, I think, from consciousness for a lot of people in the United States, especially given that Biden was elected, that it comes back and you remember that was a really key moment. And it had implications for Trump's presidency, but also we see it today. There is a war in Ukraine, which was, the subject of that dispute at that time during the election.
Craig Silverman with ProPublica, and also Joan Donovan, research director at the Shorenstein Center there at Harvard. What a great conversation. You guys do such great work. Thank you so much. You hold us all accountable for just getting the truth out there and getting things right. I appreciate you both so much.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.